welcome to Southeast Florida Real Estate and Lifestyle. I'm Susan Myers. This podcast focuses on the topic of insurance, which is not always an easily understood topic. With me today is Ryan Papy, insurance executive and president of Kai's Insurance and a founder of Tom Gallagher Insurance. Ryan has over a decade of experience in the insurance industry, specializing in identifying and negotiating insurance carrier products that are competitive and reliable for all insureds. Ryan also specializes in property risk management for individuals, developers, and corporations. He is a ninth-generation Floridian with an active family life, as well as being active within his community. Ryan also participates annually in the Dolphin Cycling Challenge, benefiting the University of Miami Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center. Welcome, Ryan. It's so nice to see you and have you with
Thank
us
you very
today.
much for having me. That was quite the mouthful.
Well, it is quite the mouthful. It's all good stuff.
Yes, well, we try.
Yes, you do. I wanted to talk about the insurance industry as being, it's always changing. It's dynamic. It's like the lending.
Correct.
Same thing, dynamic. It's competitive. And as it relates to residential real estate insurance, what changes, we're talking about Florida here, what changes, if any, are you seeing with within the industry itself?
Oh, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on here. This is great. I'm really happy to be here. So there's obviously a lot of changes that are taking place, but the number one driver that I can say and what people feel is price. So the rates in Florida have increased dramatically within the last 6 months to last 12 months especially, and are kind of forecast to continue to increase. The reason for that is quite simple. When you buy an insurance policy from State Farm, not a company we represent, so I'll just make it easy with that, State Farm, you're buying a policy that has reinsurance, so something's backed up. So they're taking your portion of your premium and they're buying insurance to make sure that they can cover your property in the event of a hurricane. That reinsurance rate has gone up. So it's gone up drastically. Since June the 1st in 2019, that reinsurance rate increased 15%, state average. So that's South Florida, that's statewide, average 15%, heavily with the rates increasing the most in the South Florida area. June the 1st of this year, that statewide average increase was 26.1%. We pay for that after we use it. So we use it this summer, and then we'll pay for it next year's in the rates. So as you look out for rates forecast in the next 18, 24 months, you should expect to see some sort of rate increasing. Not only that, but you should probably see you will see that there's going to be less competitive carriers in the market. So if you would have came to me and said, hey, can I get a quote? Last year, I might have been able to give you 5 or 6 different carriers based upon where you're located. However, today, based upon where you're located, you're probably looking at one or two carriers, and predominantly based upon the year built of the home. So things are tightening up. The prices are increasing, but it's not just always a bad situation. So what you can, with the right property, still find a very competitive rate. So if you are shopping for a new home and you keep insurance in mind, you can find something that's going to be competitive for years to come.
Interesting. Now, as I'm listening to this, the curious question, we do see carriers come and go.
Right.
They come into the market and they leave the market. Do we have time to talk about that? Why? What are the factors that bring carriers in, and what are the factors that make carriers leave?
So typically, the carriers coming in is kind of a cycle. So, it's a state-regulated market. You have to go to the state to get approved to be a carrier. And a lot of times what they'll do is some sort of incentives for carrier to enter the market, to come bring relief to the private market, to remove the burden of the state-run company, which is Citizens.
Right.
So they'll offer good plans. Some carriers will come in, they'll take out the Citizens policies, put them in the private carriers to get them started and get them going. They try that to bring in the private companies. It doesn't necessarily always work. What you see when the company stops writing business isn't mean that they're going to cancel all the policies they have in place. It just means they're not taking on any new business. And a lot of that's market driven and time driven and can go back and forth. So the carriers coming onto the market, is more cyclical in nature. And then pausing is more, day to day, what's going on with the market. How expensive is it to buy reinsurance in one area? And what price can I charge a consumer competitively to purchase that? Right now, that's a little out of whack, which is why you see many carriers saying, I can't offer you that policy because I can't pay to keep it. It's too expensive to, insure your policy than it is for money I can take in. So that's why you've seen the carriers reduce.
Are there any 1, 2, 3 factors, just factors that bring carriers in and take carriers out?
Well, yes. So the cost of reinsurance is a big factor.
Okay.
So if the cost of reinsurance goes up, that's something that will pause a carrier based upon their capacity, which is geographic. So they can pause in South Florida and still remain to be open in other parts of the carrier.
Okay.
Number 2 is claims. So the history in the state of Florida is there's been a tremendous amount of assignment benefits claims, which gives somebody really a lot of leeway to kind of take advantage of the carrier. And that's something that's been changed recently a lot, which has opened things up. Unfortunately, it's at the same time when the reinsurance is kind of kicking everybody's butts.
Yeah, okay. Very helpful to know this. We find there are sometimes when a carrier will drop someone, right? This happens.
Absolutely.
What would be a factor of the conditions under which a carrier says we're dropping our client?
Property characteristics. So typically that would be a roof or that you didn't repair your plumbing that you had a claim on, something like that. That's few and far between on the plumbing. It's happening more often on the roofs. Most of the time, though, the heavy majority is a blanket cancellation. So for us to reinsure the properties in this zip code is going to cost us X amount of dollars, and we're only allowed to charge X amount of dollars. So what we're going to do is we may cancel, remove our book, or we have too much capacity in one area, and we have to remove that capacity, maybe move it up to Orlando. So the blanket cancellations is happening a lot more than the personal ones. So when somebody calls me, I can't believe they canceled me, the first thing I typically say is, it wasn't personal. They're canceling you simply based on your address and your zip code. It's not based upon, the fact that they didn't necessarily like the way that you talked to them one day or something of that nature.
Right.
So it's good because it's not personal, but it's also sometimes more difficult because if it is an issue with the roof or plumbing, you can change that. If the carrier is saying we're no longer writing in Dade County, that's a much more difficult sell for an agent to try to keep that policy in force.
Yeah, it certainly is because there. I think of the loyalty factor. There and the human need to be. One wants to be loyal.
Yes.
This is not a loyal business. I mean,
correct.
They are.
Well, there's one. I would say that the carriers. I've been in the business now for 10 years. I don't think I've ever found a carrier that purposely tried to hurt anyone. So what I'm saying about that is, I think that the price of the reinsurance. So a carrier, if your policy goes up 30%, your carrier that year will not make any more money off that policy. They're paying that 30% to the reinsurer. So a lot of times what you're doing is you're picking your carrier that's going to negotiate the best reinsurance deal sometimes. So the carriers really do depend on the loyalty. It's a lot more expensive to unload business than it is to keep it. And they really try to keep it over a long period of time. And I think from a consumer standpoint, it is helpful to be able to say, I've been a client of yours for 5 or 6 years, because just to your point, there's so much of the market that's shopping at every renewal, moving at every price. So when you do have some sort of loyalty, I think it may even go a little bit further, but it's not necessary. And coming from a different area, somebody may say, I've been with State Farm for 30 years. Well, you may have that here for your auto, but not for your home. Because most of the carriers have this cycle of 2 or 3 years, and then they get smaller or they get much bigger, or whatever it is. But there's a lot of movement back and forth.
Without a doubt.
And that's important to do. That's something we do for our clients too. So, but that's a good question.
Yeah, thank you. And that kind of segue into customer retention. Obviously, customer retention, even though the insurance market does move, like we've discussed, but still you got to have customers.
Right, absolutely.
And you want to grow those customers, and you certainly want to sustain them, maintain them,
that's
keep
absolutely
them.
Right.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what your company does to maintain and then grow that customer base.
Absolutely.
Because
so
it's moving.
I think it's important for everybody to understand when you typically sign up a policy, the agent or the carrier, which is two different levels here, they hope to keep the client from now and forever. And the goal is when we sign up a client that we're going to keep them for at least 9 or 10 years until they have a change of life circumstance, move or sell their house, and we can keep them. So really what we try to do is we try to make sure that they have all the options available to them at every renewal like they would if they went and reshopped the policy. So what we'll do is typically in the state of Florida it's different. So not every carrier releases the renewal rates on the same day. The renewal rates, when it's triggered from the incumbent carrier, starts every renewal process because they set the rate of the replacement cost on the home, which is good for an apples-to-apples comparison to have that. So we go out, we shop the entire market. So we make the commitment that 100% of our clients receive a full insurance renewal marketing proposal from us the same day that it's released from the carrier, which is quite the commitment. But we do that because we want to make sure that the client has two things. Number one, a full market review. So they get the pricing. Sometimes it can go up significantly. Sometimes it stays the same. And say, look, this is where the rest of your market is, which will give you perspective. But the second thing, which maybe even more important, is the time. So if we can get somebody something 45 days out, 50 days out, and then they can go and have the time necessary to make the right decisions, then we feel like that's important. So I think, from a retention standpoint, that's the first number I look at because that really tells us how well we're doing, what our clients think of us.
Right.
Sales is important, but what your retention is telling you what your clients think of you.
Yeah.
And that's where we spend a lot of our time.
Yeah, and the only thing that comes to mind, two words that come to mind, is education and communication.
Absolutely.
Those are the two words that...
Gosh, that's perfect.
Yeah, that come to mind.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
That educated consumer is your best consumer at the end of the day.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah. And also the whole the piece of trust. I'm getting credible information from which I can base a decision on.
Correct.
So education and communications. Okay.
That's exactly right. If you're sitting there as a consumer, you understand the markets can move up and down. I don't think I've ever really dealt with a consumer before that had any issue and thought that I had made anything changes on the rates. What they want to know is they want to know the information that you have in a communicable way at the right time so that they have every advantage that you can offer to them. Yeah. And that's really what we strive to do. And the good thing is, although the insurance market moves up and down a lot, there's some benefits that you have from an insurance agency. You know who's coming up to renew a year out because it's a policy you have 12 months.
Your future business, you're
absolutely right.
You know what you're at risk to lose.
That's exactly right. So you can maintain that relationship.
Yep.
You can set the tone on it. Start showing them what the quality level of service that you're providing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the fun part.
Excellent. You're absolutely right. That would be where the fun part would lie.
That's exactly right.
Thank you for mentioning that because if I were in your shoes, I'd know what my book of business was. And I know it would be mine to either keep or lose.
That's exactly
right.
So
then you can, during this whole, the education communication piece is clearly meant to as a retention tool.
Yeah.
Do you think that, I'm also seeing, correct me if I'm wrong, insurance, the language itself is complicated. Okay, you put it on paper, try to read a policy.
Right.
Okay. Do you think that that insurance companies are getting better at talking to lay people, talking in lay terms, making it digestible?
Okay. The answer is absolutely not. Part of that
surprised me.
Part of that is designed that way, to be it, but it creates the opportunity because that's the carrier, right? Now you're the agent for a reason.
Yes.
And if they want to deal directly with the carrier, then they'd have to learn that language. So there's a tremendous opportunity in today's age to really move this industry along into becoming more user-friendly. So it's not necessarily just technology, which I'm sure we'll get into soon, but it's the user-friendly aspect of it so that you get something and it looks like it came from Apple. Here's what your renewal was last year, here's what it was this year, and then another box, these are the changes. And it'll tell you in a green or red arrow if you're making progress or you're getting hurt, right? So that's what we're working towards. The reason it's not there is because it's not necessarily an exciting thing to do. So there's people out there that are transforming all these businesses that are doing all this, and there's all these people. It's taken a while for them to say, hey, why don't we transform the way that we communicate insurance terms to people? But it's something we're working on. That is certainly the future. So the fact that the carrier is not spending a lot of time doing that is a good thing, because it gives us the opportunity to go out there and do that ourselves.
And do that. Well, that would be, to me, when as an agent, you're a bit of a hybrid, because you're in a hybrid position, because you go back and I'll talk insurance talk with our carriers.
Right.
But I'm the messenger.
That's exactly right.
I need to come back and I can speak Latin with you, but I got to go speak English with the customer.
That's exactly right.
So that's how I view you, as this hybrid.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's something that, it's not something that we say that we're more brilliant at. It's like one of those things that if you went in a foreign country and you hadn't heard the language before, you're not just going to know it the first time around.
Right.
And if you're dealing with it once out of every 12 months, then it's not something that you're not going to get an expert in. And I think that's really kind of what we see as our mission statement is. We want to bring in all this information that we're dealing with every day, 365 days a year, bring it down for that client and say, listen, we're going to have a 45-day window. We're going to look at these different things. This is what we're starting on pricing and coverages.
Right.
And let's see where we're at. But really, that's what we can do, is we can get that information to the client that makes sense. And then they'll say, you know what? The pricing's not great, but I see that it's the best I can get.
Well, there you go. I think that now we're talking about, you were able to communicate something, but what they saw, maybe the pricing wasn't what they would like, but somewhere along the line they saw value.
Oh, yes.
You taught them value.
Right. Well, as soon as you can demonstrate value, price no longer becomes an issue.
That's right.
That said, I can say that confidently because we don't determine the price. So although we are very competitive, we have all the different carriers out there, we can come and say, look, as soon as we've come in and listened, and shown you where we can be helpful to you based upon what you're saying to us, then all of a sudden, the pricing is something that's them picking what option that they would like. But really, it's listening to them. And the one thing I can also say is, nobody wants to, when they shop 3 or 4 different agents, nobody wants to have the conversation 4 times with 4 agents explaining their insurance scenario, because that's enough to do anybody under.
Absolutely.
So if we're in our role and we can hear your story, we can hear out, and we're the lucky beneficiaries of hearing that, then we can go ahead and act on it in their best interest.
Yeah, I agree. And that would be an agent who is really good in that hybrid role.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Really good in that hybrid role.
Correct.
I suspect there are probably some people in there that are not.
Oh, yes. No, there's some that, you can come across people that are very, very intellectual. They understand the ins and outs of it perfectly, but then they can't pass that on, or they make, come off in some sort of, almost like they're talking down. And then you can have the opposite. So we try to operate somewhere in the middle.
Right.
If you were looking at all of the people in the company, we probably have a mixture of both. But I think you really hit it on the head. It's condensing that. As we came in today, I was, thinking about a new system that we're having where every client has access to everything on their cell phone. So you're not getting that from the carrier, you're getting it from the agent.
Right.
So, and that's really, we think that there's a great opportunity to go out there. We do think that the way that people will be purchasing insurance, managing their files in the future is a lot different than it will be today. There will be some disruption, but we want to be the disruptor.
That's right.
So that's what we're trying to do. And that's, and there's other agents out there doing it. There's, that are good. But the whole concept of, yesteryear where it really meant, you could have lunch with somebody to get their renewal.
No, that's gone.
Done. You got to prove the service.
I would say those are gone.
Put it on the paper, and you got to get to the next step.
I would say those days are long gone. You're absolutely
Which is
right.
good. Which is good. We need to earn it.
That's right. And there was no transparency in that time.
That's exactly right,
None whatsoever.
too.
Today we have a tremendous transparency, which doesn't allow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So when somebody gets a quote from us, they'll see, whether it makes them feel good or not, they'll see how the whole market looks at their property.
That's right.
And a lot of the times you have to go back to the client and say, listen, kind of what we hit on before, it's not personal. It's nothing against you. Some of the nicest homes are a little bit older. So then therefore they may get denied a little bit more.
Right.
So you do have to coach people up and make sure that they know that's not, you're not talking bad about one of their kids or something, getting something denied because people take their property. as something like that.
Yeah,
It's that
yeah,
close to them.
Yeah, yeah. True consultancy. True consultancy
Yes.
model, without
Yeah.
a doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you can't limit, if you go by measuring the transactions, you're going to quickly become in trouble.
Right.
You need to measure something that's more valuable than that. Like essentially, like how many people saved our number in their phone today?
Right.
And that's what we go for.
Yeah.
So
That takes us right back to the technology
Yes.
piece. How does technology help drive your business?
I think so it drives our business because we have the ability to if you're very, and I'm not, say we have a producer in our office, that producer is much more powerful. They can take their knowledge of how many deals they can do each day, and it's significantly more than they could have done 5 years ago because of the technology. So they're more powerful, they can impact more people. That is one of the number one things we can do. Number two is it makes us more competitive. We have to be on our toes. People can reach out to our book of business at any time, anywhere, through a variety of different mediums.
Right.
And we need to be in front of the client, demonstrating that value on not daily. Nobody wants to talk to their insurance person daily. That's a good way to get blocked. But at least, on the big days, the birthdays, all that, you got to have the communication, having the value, talking to them, seeing if their circumstances change. So there's more competition. We definitely have the capability to get more done in a day. But I think to your point, that transparency is what's changed. So the technology making it transparent. So if we sat down today and you sent me a quote last night, you sent me the quote because for one reason, you wanted me to handle it for you, not because you couldn't get it yourself. So when I'm coming in that next day, I know that you could have done it yourself, and that what I should be preparing should be at least better than what you could get, there. And you can check on pricing, you can do all that. So that's good, that's important. Yeah. Number two is the industry is starting to do a much better job at tracking the person as opposed to track, before an auto, they'll track you through your MVR record. They can also track a home through a claims report. Now they're doing a much better job at tracking the person for their home, which is making it better for the client, because if you haven't had claims, you're going to start seeing benefits because you're going to perform in a better group. And then some that have had claims might have more trouble. So the transparency is important. How much work we can take on, how powerful one person can be is certainly another.
Yeah. So it's really affected the business in general in a broad sweep.
Right.
Many levels. Many levels. Okay.
But there's still a lot left.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of other industries that have been disrupted, and ours has kind of been brushed. It's kind of like they get into it and they're like, oh man, I don't really want to figure out how we do that with the inspections or how we do it with all these moving parts and pieces. So we can expect this process to be the same as we move forward, and you will always need that human person. It's not you can't go and bind an insurance policy in Florida today, traditional homeowners policy, without dealing with an agent in some sort of fashion or dealing with an inspector to get information about the property. So that will always remain, and that's a good thing. There's a lot of people in the industry that are dependent upon that, but it's also good for accuracy, because insurance is risk pooling a population, and the more accurate you can be, the better off that risk pool perform. And that's really what, everybody focuses on insurance on themselves, but your neighborhood is kind of your region. That's what's really driving the price up. The better that the consumer can see that, the better off we'll be long term.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense. I want to talk about Kai's Insurance and how you distinguish yourself from the competition. What distinguishing factors can you share?
So a lot of it's, one of those things that's like, hey, are we really good? Or are we the only ones that want it? It's kind of joking around there, but and I am joking around. But as we've grown, we've become very predominant in the residential property space. And because we've had the volume, because we've had the support of all, the referral sources that we have, we've really created a niche. So our niche is competitive pricing on new business transactions. And since we've done the volume that we've done, and we have the process in place, which I think is unique because of our volume, most of the time people are talking to somebody that's had close to 5,000 policies in the last 2 years. So we're very unique, different there. But the other thing is, I think, and I know there's a lot of other people that may believe this, but I think we really, truly strive every day to be the best. So for us, we strive to make it a pleasurable experience from the time that they're on board to the time that they're accepted to the time that it's bound. And the last thing I'll say operationally, because it's important, is when you accept the policy and you tell your agent you want to buy it, there's typically a 45-day period from bound to accepted. Because we deal with so many new business purchases and we don't want things always pushing back to our referral sources, we have a specific department that takes it from its bound, which means you want to buy it, to the carrier says it accepts it. They handhold it during that time period to make sure that no fires blow up, because that's the one time that they do. So that's probably, if you were to look in, that's the one area that we're doing a lot different than most people.
And that's a good thing. Again, the residential market.
Yes.
Very
yes,
good.
ma'am.
This is great. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
It's really just fun to just hear this and also too to get some validation as to how some of this really does work. I love the hybrid thing. The fact that you got to know an awful lot.
Right.
And you have to be that messenger you clearly are the messengers to your customers.
Absolutely
education, communication, folks. We learned that today. A couple of things. I wanted to let people know how to reach out to you.
Sure.
So for those of you who have questions and would like to reach out to Ryan, his email address is Ryan, that's RYAN, at Keyes, KEYES, quote.com. You can also learn more about Keyes Insurance by checking out the website at www.keyesquote.com. And of course, for those of you who seek to buy or sell in Southeast Florida, you can reach me directly at 561-676-5786. And my email address is Susan Myers, it's MEYERS, at Keyes.com. Thank you, folks, and have a great day.